In this video, you're going to learn how to troubleshoot issues with data not saving to your Bubble database. There are many reasons why this might happen, so I'm going to walk you through a list of the most common causes for data saving problems. You're likely going to find that your issue is one of these. And save this video for later because if another problem comes up, you can use this as a checklist. All right, let's dive in. The first thing you'll want to check are the actual dynamic expressions that you're using to save information to your database. This is a really easy spot to mix things up and cross wires. So I'm going to show you something that comes up all the time with this that prevents data from actually being saved properly. So I'm currently logged in as a user named Phoebe Buffet. This is the full name value that's saved to a text field in the user record. I'm actually going to show you real quick here. Okay, so this is my user record right here. I'm currently logged in as this person, and we can see there is a full name field. This is just a text that displays their first and last name, Phoebe Buffet. And in my design, okay, this is exactly what I'm displaying, the current user's full name. All right, so I have an input here called input name 1. This is just a text. And when I click on save, what I wanted to do is save the value of this input to the user's full name field so that it can update. So if I go over to the preview here and I type in Jane Doe and click on save, here is an issue that we're running into. Notice that the full name value completely went away. Going back into the database, all right, I'm going to refresh the data here. It's completely blank. And this is something that comes up all the time. You run a workflow and the data gets wiped out, or you end up saving the wrong data to this field. So if we go into the workflow for this particular event here, right, the button Save Name is clicked. I'm going to make a change to the current user. Here's what's going on. The full name field is set to equal input name 2's value. So if I reveal this element over here, it's going to show me that I'm actually pointing to the wrong input. Again, this comes up all the time. It's really common for you to have many different data sources on your page, lots of different inputs, custom states, things like that. And it's easy to cross wires here. So one of the first things that I would suggest is make sure that all of your inputs are very clearly labeled so that you know which one you're looking at when you set up your actions. So I'm going to change this over to input name 1's value. Okay, that's the one at the top that I want to work with. Let's refresh the page. And now I'm going to type in Jane Doe again. Jane Doe and save, all right? And so now this saves properly. The reason why it cleared it out before was because the workflow was previously referencing this input, which had no value there. So it was saving that blank value to that full name field. Okay, but now we're pointing to the right input, so we've got the right thing happening in the workflow. The next area you'll want to check are your privacy rules. This is something that can definitely create a conflict when you're saving information. So let's take a quick look at the privacy rules section of our editor here. This is under the data tab and then the privacy subtab. So I have my user data type here, which is completely unrestricted. There are no rules set up, which means that I can find all users in any searches and I can view all of the fields. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, again, right now I'm currently logged in as Phoebe. And I have in the design this group set up to reference a different user. Okay, this is the group that holds my input and my save button. So the group's type of content is user. The data source is searching for a specific user whose email address equals monica@example.com. Okay, so this is a different user. And I'm going to the first item in that search result. There should only be one. So if I go into my database and app data, we're looking at this user here. We're looking up this person logged in as Phoebe. Okay, so if I come in here and I set the name to Monica updated, all right, so before I hit save, going to go back to the editor to show you in the workflow, we're making a change to the parent group's user. It's no longer the current user, and the full name is going to be equal to that input's value. Okay, so basically I'm saying go find Monica's record, update Monica's record to full name equals input to's value. Okay, so I'm going to click on save here. Remember, this doesn't change the current user's detail. I don't have another visual cue on the front end here, but let's go back into the back end and we're going to refresh the data. Just keep an eye on this field here where it says Monica Geller. I'll click on refresh and now it says Monica updated. Okay, so we know that that flow went through. So going back to privacy rules, here's where you can run into the issues. If you have privacy rules in place, you could potentially be locking out the person from accessing the right record and therefore nothing will save. So I'm going to create a rule called own record like this. Okay, this will address anybody who, where the user in question, this user is the current user, we're giving them access to their own record. right? They can view all the fields, they can find their own record in searches, things like that. But as far as the default permission goes, if you don't fall under this rule when you're looking at a particular record, you're not going to be able to find them in searches. You're not going to be able to view any field. Okay, so we're only allowed to access our own record. So back into the front end preview here, I'm going to update Monica's name one more time. So we'll say Monica updated again, like this. If I click on save, nothing in the visuals is going to show me, so let's go into the database here, and I'm going to click on refresh. Notice that nothing has changed. Okay, I'm going to try this one more time, test, test. Okay, click on save, go back into the database, click on refresh. Nothing is getting updated. Why? Because I'm currently logged in as Phoebe, and because of this privacy rule, I only have access to my own record. I'm being locked out, I'm being restricted from accessing anybody else's. That includes Monica here. So therefore, I can't find that record in the search for this group data source, and of course can't update anything. In fact, you can also see this within the debugger. If you go to inspect, and we're going to select the group here, notice that the user for the data source is empty. And here's my expression for that data source, searching for users where the email equals monica@example.com. It's not turning up with the result because of the privacy rule. Okay, so now if I go to unlock that rule, so let's go back to data, privacy, and I'm going to remove all of the rules here. I could have also given the everyone else permission the ability to find in searches, view all fields. Either way, I'm giving everyone access. All right, I'm going to check the group data source again, inspect, click on the group, and we can see now Monica's details are turning up again. Go into this search here, first item, I do see Monica's details there. So this is another way for me to confirm that I do have access to the record. So we'll say Monica Geller, and then I'm going to say V2, version 2, right? So we know that this is the value that is the latest. Click on save. I'm going to go over to my app data, and we can see there it is. It's just now been updated. So definitely make sure that your privacy rules are giving you the kind of access you need for all of your flows. The next thing to look at are your conditions. You can have conditions in the workflows that could prevent your action from running where you need to save information. So here I have a third input name 3, and another save button. So let's go to the workflow here. So what this one is doing is when this button is clicked, I have a condition on it. I do want to make a change to the current user, but only when the current user is logged in. If they're logged out, there is no record for them to update, so we're protecting this workflow from only running if they are currently logged in. Now, you might be looking to debug the action itself that's making the change if you're finding that nothing's being saved to the database, but don't forget to check any conditions that you have at the event level, right? At the event level, no matter how many actions I have here, if this condition fails, none of the actions will run beneath it. You can of course have conditions on the action itself, but just make sure that you're checking everything. So for our example, I am currently logged in as Phoebe. I'm going to change Phoebe's name to Phoebe B with the initial only. Click save. I can see that that has been updated. I'm going to log out of this application here, and let's refresh it actually. Okay, so we can clear the input, and I'm going to try to update Phoebe's name one more time. We'll say Phoebe updated like this, click on save, and nothing is coming through because that workflow event failed. And this is another thing that we can check with the debugger. So if I go to step by step and click on save, it's going to show me from the start when this button is clicked, there's a condition here that's failing. This is in red telling me that the condition is failing, which means that none of the actions are going to run. If I try to go run next, it's not going to move to the make changes to current user. It's just going to end the whole process. All right, so now if I come back into my database and run as Phoebe one more time, okay, so now I'm logged in, so I should pass the condition. So let's change to Phoebe Buffet V2, like this. All right, and I'm going to show you with the debugger turned on step by step. Click save. Okay, now this condition's in green. I am passing this because I am logged in. Run next. Now we are able to make a change to the current user. Full name is going to equal whatever I've typed into that input, which is the value of Phoebe Buffet V2. Click run next, and I can see that it has been updated there. I can go back into the database and refresh my data, and I can see it's also been updated here. Okay, the next thing you'll want to look for are any conflicting workflows where you could have actions running back to back, canceling each other out, and therefore preventing anything from really being updated. I see this all the time with yes and no values. Okay, so here's our scenario. The user data type has an active field, which is a yes or no value. Okay, they either are or are not active. All right, and when the user clicks on this make active button, we're just going to toggle that value back and forth from yes to no, from no to yes, back and forth, right? It's binary. I also have this text here to display the value just so that we have a visual cue that it went through. Current user's active, this is a yes or no, but I'm reformatting that yes or no so that for the word yes, instead of saying yes, it'll say active, and then for the word no, it'll say inactive. Okay, so going over to the workflow, when I click on this button, I have two actions here. The first is to update the current user. Active equals yes, as long as the current user's active field is currently no. And then we have the opposite in the second action. Change the field to no if the user's field is currently set to yes, right? Seems straightforward enough. It's one or the other, right? So if I go and try to run this, right, I'm clicking on the button right now and nothing is happening. I should be seeing this status change back and forth, but nothing is happening. I'm going to run this with the debugger now, with the step-by-step mode. Click on the button, okay? The first action here, we can see that the condition is passing because the current user's active is currently set to no. I can evaluate this further, clicking on current user. You can see I'm currently logged in as Phoebe, and active field is set to no. So that means that we're changing the value to yes. Okay, so I'm going to click on run next, and you'll notice now in the text element in the design, it actually says status active. Okay, but look at what happens in the workflow. Now that we are active, the second action's condition is now true. Okay, so the current user's active is actually yes now, which means it's going to change the value back to no. So if I continue, run next, it'll change it back. Now when I'm clicking the button in real time, the changes happen so quickly that we don't actually see anything going on. But really what's happening is that it is making this first change and immediately changing it back because the second action's condition is now true by the time it gets to it. So the solution here is you want to split this up into two events, okay, instead of two actions, because the event is going to run no matter what. There's no condition on this. But you can split it up into two events so that only one event runs at a time, because Bubble will evaluate the conditions at the event level first, right? So I'm going to copy this expression here and go into this event, okay, and I'm going to remove this action, and we don't need the condition again at the action level. So when this button is clicked and the current user's active is currently no, then we'll update the user's active field to yes. All right, so now I'm going to duplicate this workflow. I'm just going to copy and paste, okay, and we're going to swap everything. So active is yes, and then this value is set to no, like that. Okay, so we have one going in one direction and the other going in the other direction. No and yes, no and yes. All right, so I'm going to refresh the page, and now I'm going to click on the button. Okay, now this is working as an actual toggle element, just like that. Perfect. Okay, real quick here. If you're finding this helpful, we have so much more to teach you in our free extended workshop over at coachingnocodeapps.com/workshop, where we'll guide you through our four-phased approach for going from idea to app. So if you're looking for a start to finish guide, go ahead and register for it when you're done with this video, and you'll get immediate access to the training. I've got the link in the description below and on the screen right now. For now, let's head back to our lesson. The next area to check are any custom events that are involved in your workflows. There are actually many different points here with the setup of a custom event that could create problems. So ultimately, I am still trying to just update the name for a user, but this time for this flow here, I do have a custom event involved. So once again, let's see Phoebe's name right now has V2 in it. So if I change this to V3, okay, click on save, I can see that it's updated here. We know that the flow is working properly. So I'm going to take you through it so I can point out, the different areas where you may have something misconfigured. When this button is clicked, I'm going to trigger a custom event. Okay, this is not making a change to the user yet. It's triggering a custom event, which is just a second workflow. So the custom event I'm triggering is called Save User Details. We can see it over here on the left-hand side, Save User Details. And I'm also passing information to that custom event via a parameter. Okay, so if I go over to the custom event now, I can see here's a parameter that I've set up called full name. And it's a text and it's required. Okay, when you add a parameter, you set up a key. Okay, let me actually go to the existing parameter like this. Right, here's my key. I've set it up as a text and I do not have the optional field checked. So this is a required parameter, meaning whenever I trigger, so from our save button, whenever I trigger it, I have to send a value to this parameter. so that the custom event can receive it. So this is already, we were already looking at a couple points where you could encounter failure here. First, make sure that you're even triggering the custom event to begin with. I've definitely seen the actual trigger get missed, right? The whole custom event gets set up. You have your event. You may have many other actions, but the actual trigger of the custom event from one workflow to the next could be the thing that's missing. The second thing is if you're missing a value with a required parameter. If I were not to have a value here, you can see that this actually throws an issue. So this one should be pretty obvious because it does come up in the issue checker. However, if your parameter, let's go over to our custom event here and open up the settings for it, is marked as optional, okay, and I'm going to click on save, notice that the issue goes away because now it's okay for this parameter to be empty. So if you have an optional parameter and you've not sent information and you're not seeing any issues, but you're not getting any data saved, it's maybe because you have not passed in any information into that optional parameter where your workflow needs it. Okay, so I'm going to bring our input back. Let's take this back here to where it was, our inputs value, and we can see that this has been changed back to required. So now once we hit the custom event, this is going to trigger our make a change to current user action, full name equals whatever the parameter value is. Of course, I can also reference the input from here, but this is a very simple example just to point out all of these different potential failure points when you have custom events involved, right? Because there could be a chain of events, one triggering after another. You may also have many other actions within these events as well. So it could be a little harder to see, but just double check all your settings, make sure that you have that trigger, make sure that you are sending the information over, especially if it's required, and that you're using that information properly when it comes time to update your database record. Next, backend workflows. If your front-end designs are triggering any back-end workflows that ultimately need to make that database change, all of the things that we've mentioned before are still going to apply here. Okay, so I'm going to take you into the editor for this one. All right, so when this save button is clicked, instead of making the change directly on the page, we're going to schedule one of our back-end workflows that we've called update user details. This also has a parameter very similar to a custom event. The parameter is called name, and I'm passing in the inputs value. I'm also scheduling this to run right now. Okay, so in the backend workflow, I have, let me open up my folder here. I have this event here called update user details. This is my API workflow. Notice here's my parameter. Again, we have this concept of a required parameter or an optional parameter. This is a text. And then here in the backend workflow, I'm making my change to the current user. Full name equals the value of that parameter. Now, API workflows also have a few other settings around authentication, ignoring privacy rules, things like that. You may have conditions on the event level, you may have conditions on the action level. Okay, so check all of these settings to see if there's something that is preventing the action from finally making that change with the appropriate value. Now keep in mind that backend workflows will only run if you're on a paid plan. So if you're just now getting started and you've started putting together some backend workflows and you see that nothing is happening, it may be because you're on a free plan. Okay, so backend workflows will only work on paid plans. But on top of that, there's actually a setting. Let's actually go to the logs tab of your editor and then to the scheduler subtab. There is a setting here where you can pause your backend workflow activity. Okay, this is typically going to happen if you're troubleshooting something, if you don't want your workflows to run, especially if you have looping workflows, okay, for more complex systems. But if you pause your tasks to troubleshoot things, do not forget to resume your tasks. I see this come up all the time. The backend workflows are working great, then something needed to be adjusted, so they were paused temporarily, and now they're just not working at all. Well, it may be because you're still paused here. Okay, so this is going to stop all activity in the backend workflows area entirely. It's not one where you pick and choose. So be mindful of this setting, especially if you use it to help yourself troubleshoot backend workflows in general. And finally, we have the concept of disabled workflows. Now, this one may seem obvious, especially in the design of the workflow area here. You have this red label that clearly tells you if the workflow is disabled or not, but you'd be surprised how often this actually gets overlooked. So if you're trying to run a workflow, just make sure that it's not disabled, because if it is, nothing is going to happen. It's the equivalent of your backend workflows being paused here, right? But this time, this is actually on a workflow by workflow basis. So you can go to the menu, the more menu here for the workflow, and you can enable and disable as you need. So just make sure that that's not the thing that's getting in the way of your data being saved properly. All right, I hope that was helpful. We've got more great lessons coming up for you on the next screen. And don't forget to register for that free extended workshop. The link for that is in the description below.